The rain poured down in sheets as Jack gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white with fury. His truck, his pride and joy, was nowhere to be found. Instead, a towing receipt fluttered on the windshield of his designated parking spot, the words "Towed by Blackwood Hills HOA," stamped in bold, mocking letters. Clenching his jaw, Jack stormed into the HOA office, his boots squelching against the pristine marble floors. The receptionist, a haughty woman with a permanent sneer, eyed him with disdain. "I'm looking for my truck," Jack growled, slamming his fist on the counter. "It was towed without warning. I need it back now." The receptionist's lips curled into a cruel smile. "I'm afraid that's not possible, Mr. Ryder. Your vehicle was parked in a restricted area. You'll have to pay the fine and the towing fee before we can release it." Jack's eyes narrowed. "Restricted area? There's no such thing. This is my assigned spot." "Ah, but you see," the receptionist purred, retrieving a document from her desk. "The bylaws were recently updated. Didn't you receive the email?" She tusked, shaking her head in mock sympathy. "I'm afraid you're in violation, and the penalties for non-compliance are quite steep." Fury boiled in Jack's veins, but he forced himself to remain calm. "I want to speak to the HOA president. Now." The receptionist's smile widened. "I'm afraid that won't be possible. Miss Blackwood is a very busy woman." She leaned forward, her eyes glinting with triumph. "However, I can schedule you an appointment for next month. Perhaps by then, you'll have learned to follow the rules." Before Jack could respond, the doors burst open, and a towering figure strode in, rainwater dripping from his uniform. Jack's breath caught in his throat as he recognized the unmistakable insignia of the fire department. "What's going on here?" the fire chief demanded, his deep voice rumbling with authority. The receptionist's face paled. "Chief Donovan, what a pleasant surprise. How can I assist you?" "One of my trucks was towed from the fire lane. I want it back, immediately." Jack's heart raced as the pieces fell into place. His asterisk truck, the one he'd painstakingly restored, belonged to the fire chief. Suddenly, the tables had turned, and the HOA's iron grip seemed to loosen. The receptionist stammered, her composure crumbling. I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. We weren't aware of that." "Save it," Chief Donovan growled, cutting her off. "I want that truck back on the premises, or heads will roll. Am I clear?" The receptionist nodded frantically, hurrying to make the necessary arrangements. Jack watched in stunned silence as the chief turned to face him, a glint of amusement in his eyes. "You must be Mr. Ryder. I've heard a lot about you." Chief Donovan extended his hand. "Seems like you and I have a common enemy." Jack shook the proffered hand, his mind racing. I don't understand. How did you know it was my truck?" The chief chuckled. "Let's just say I have my ways." He leaned in, his voice lowering to a conspiratorial whisper. "And I think it's time we teach the Blackwood Hills HOA a lesson they won't soon forget." As the tow truck pulled up and his beloved vehicle was returned, Jack felt a surge of newfound determination. The HOA had made a grave mistake in trifling with the fire chief's property, and with a powerful ally by his side, Jack was ready to wage war against the corrupt and tyrannical regime that had ruled Blackwood Hills for far too long. The storm outside raged on, but Jack knew that the real storm was just beginning. The tires of Jack's truck crunched against the gravel as he pulled into the driveway, the fire chief's vehicle following close behind. As they stepped out of their respective cars, a sense of unease settled over the neighborhood, the rain-soaked streets and flickering streetlights creating an atmosphere of ominous tension. Chief Donovan surveyed the row of well-manicured lawns and pristine white picket fences, his brow furrowed. "This place has the perfect facade, doesn't it? A false sense of order and civility, hiding the rot that lies beneath." Jack nodded, his grip tightening on the car door. "The Blackwood Hills HOA has been a thorn in my side for years. They've made my life a living hell with their petty rules and power-hungry bureaucracy. The chief's expression hardened. Well, it's time to take the gloves off. This isn't just about your truck anymore. It's about standing up to a corrupt and oppressive system that's been allowed to run rampant for far too long. Jack felt a surge of determination coursing through him. What did you have in mind? A gleam of mischief flickered in the chief's eyes. First, we need to gather some intel. I have a few friends in high places who can help us uncover the skeletons in the HOA's closet. He gestured toward the imposing gates of the neighborhood. Once we have the ammunition, we strike. As they made their way toward the chief's car, a movement in the shadows caught Jack's eye. Narrowing his gaze, he spotted a security camera, its red light blinking ominously. Looks like we're being watched. Chief Donovan followed his gaze and chuckled. Good. Let them know we're coming. The next morning, Jack found himself seated in the chief's office, poring over a stack of documents that had been hastily delivered overnight. Damning evidence of financial mismanagement, bribery, and abuse of power lay before them, each page a damning indictment of the Blackwood Hills HOA's corrupt practices. This is worse than I thought, Jack murmured, his fingers tracing the signatures of the HOA board members. They've been embezzling funds, rigging elections, and intimidating homeowners who dare to question their authority. The chief leaned back in his chair, his expression grave. And it looks like they've been using the fire department's resources to enforce their will. Towing vehicles, harassing residents. It's all part of the strategy to maintain control. Jack felt a surge of anger coursing through him. We have to put a stop to this. The residents of Blackwood Hills deserve to know the truth. Agreed, the chief said, his voice firm. But we need to be careful. The Blackwood Hills HOA is a powerful entity, and they won't go down without a fight. Suddenly, the door to the office burst open, and a flustered-looking receptionist hurried in. Chief Donovan, there's a situation at the fire station. You're needed immediately. The chief exchanged a meaningful glance with Jack. I'll handle this. In the meantime, keep digging. We need to uncover as much dirt as possible before we make our move. As Jack watched the chief stride out of the office, a sense of grim determination settled over him. The gloves were off, and the battle lines had been drawn. The Blackwood Hills HOA had met its match, and this war was just getting started. The air in the Blackwood Hills HOA office was thick with tension as Jack sat across from Ms. Blackwood, the imposing HOA president. Her cold, calculating gaze bore into him, and he could feel the weight of her scrutiny. Mr. Ryder, she began, her voice dripping with false sympathy. I understand there's been a misunderstanding regarding your vehicle. Rest assured, it was all just a simple clerical error. Jack leaned forward, his eyes narrowed. A simple error? You had my truck towed, despite it being parked in my assigned spot. And now I'm being told I have to pay a hefty fine to get it back. Ms. Blackwood's lips curled into a condescending smile. Well, you see, Mr. Ryder, the rules are quite clear. We have a responsibility to maintain the aesthetics and order of our community. Unauthorized vehicles in restricted areas simply cannot be tolerated. Jack clenched his fists, his knuckles turning white. Restricted area? That spot has been mine for years. You can't just change the rules without notifying the residents. Ah, but that's where you're mistaken, Ms. Blackwood purred, retrieving a stack of documents from her desk. The bylaws were updated last month, and the new regulations were clearly communicated to all homeowners. She tapped the papers with a manicured finger. I'm afraid you simply haven't been keeping up. Jack's mind raced as he scanned the documents, his heart sinking with each line. The bylaws had indeed been altered, granting the HOA sweeping powers to control every aspect of the community, from parking to landscaping to the color of one's front door. This is outrageous, he growled, tossing the papers back onto the desk. You're using these rules to bully and manipulate the residents. It's nothing but a power grab. Miss Blackwood's expression remained calm, but a flicker of unease passed across her features. Now, Mr. Ryder, let's not get carried away. We're simply here to maintain the high standards that make Blackwood Hills the premier community in the area. She leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. Surely, a reasonable person such as yourself can understand the necessity of such measures. Jack's jaw tightened, and he could feel the rage bubbling just beneath the surface. Reasonable. You call these bylaws reasonable? They're nothing but a tool for you and your cronies to line your pockets and crush anyone who dares to defy you. I must caution you, Mr. Ryder, Ms. Blackwood warned, her voice lowering to a dangerous tone. Throwing around such accusations could have serious consequences. Perhaps it's time we reconsidered your position in this community. The unspoken threat hung in the air, and Jack knew he was treading on dangerous ground. But the fire in his belly refused to be extinguished. I won't be intimidated, Ms. Blackwood. This isn't over. As he rose from his chair and stormed out of the office, Jack couldn't help but feel a sense of foreboding. The Blackwood Hills HOA was a formidable adversary, and they had clearly gone to great lengths to consolidate their power. But he was not alone in this fight. The fire chief's resources and connections had already proven invaluable. Gripping the steering wheel of his truck, Jack's mind raced with plans and strategies. He would need to be smart, cunning, and relentless if he hoped to take down the HOA's corrupt regime. The stakes were high, but the thought of letting these power-hungry tyrants win was unacceptable. One thing was certain: the battle lines had been drawn, and Jack was ready to wage war. The rain had stopped, but the air in Blackwood Hills was thick with tension as Jack made his way through the dimly lit streets. His mind was a whirlwind of plans and strategies, each one more daring than the last. Turning a corner, he spotted Chief Donovan's car parked discreetly in the shadows. The fire chief stepped out to greet him, his expression grave. "I've been going through the documents you provided," Donovan said, his voice low. "The corruption runs deeper than I thought. The Blackwood Hills HOA has been embezzling funds, raiding elections, and using the fire department's resources to intimidate and control the residents." Jack clenched his fists, anger boiling in his veins. "I knew they were corrupt, but this is unforgivable. We have to take them down, once and for all." Donovan nodded, his brow furrowed. "I'd agree, but we need to be careful. The Blackwood Hills HOA has eyes and ears everywhere. They'll be watching our every move." "Then we'll have to play their game," Jack said, his mind racing. "Use their own tactics against them. Outwit them at every turn." The chief's lips curled into a grim smile. "I like the way you think, Ryder. But we'll need more than just a clever plan. We need hard evidence, something that will blow the lid off this whole operation and expose them for the corrupt bastards they are." Jack's eyes narrowed. "That's where I come in. I've been doing some digging of my own, and I think I found the perfect way to get the evidence we need." He outlined his plan, watching as Donovan's expression shifted from skepticism to grudging admiration. "It's risky," the chief admitted, "but if it works, it could be exactly what we need to bring the Blackwood Hills HOA down." Jack's heart raced with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. "Are you in?" Donovan nodded, his eyes glinting with determination. "Let's do it." Over the next few days, Jack and Donovan put their plan into motion, working in the shadows and keeping a watchful eye on their every move. They knew the Blackwood Hills HOA was no doubt aware of their activities, but they refused to be intimidated. As the plan reached its critical stage, Jack found himself alone in the dark, rain-soaked streets, his heart pounding in his chest. He had to be careful. One misstep could ruin everything. Suddenly, a movement in the shadows caught his eye. Narrowing his gaze, he spotted a figure lurking in the distance, their features obscured by the darkness. Jack's grip tightened on the camera in his hand as he moved closer, his senses heightened. The figure seemed to sense his presence and began to retreat, but Jack was faster. "Stop right there," he shouted, his voice echoing through the empty streets. The figure hesitated, and Jack seized his chance, snapping a series of photographs. The flash illuminated the figure's face, and Jack felt a surge of triumph as he recognized the distinctive features of Miss Blackwood, the HOA president. "I've got you now, you corrupt bitch," Jack muttered under his breath, pocketing the camera and hurrying away, his mind already racing with the next step of his plan. As he made his way back to the chief's office, Jack couldn't help but feel a sense of cautious optimism. The Blackwood Hills HOA had met its match, and this war was far from over. The air in Chief Donovan's office was thick with tension as Jack presented the photographic evidence he had gathered. The images were damning, clearly showing Ms. Blackwood and several other HOA board members meeting with a notorious local developer known for his shady business dealings. Donovan studied the photographs, his brow furrowed. "This is exactly what we needed. With this, we can blow the lid off the Blackwood Hills HOA's corruption and take them down for good." Jack nodded, his expression grim. "The evidence is clear. They've been colluding with this developer to line their own pockets, all while using the HOA's power to intimidate and exploit the residents." The chief's jaw tightened. "And they've been using the fire department's resources to do it. That's a line they shouldn't have crossed." Jack leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "So, what's the plan? How do we take them down?" Donovan's lips curled into a determined smile. "We're going to hold a press conference. Expose the Blackwood Hills HOA's corruption for all the world to see. And then we'll go after them legally, sue them for abuse of power, misappropriation of funds, the whole 9 yards. They'll fight back," Jack warned, "and they won't go down without a fight." "I'm counting on it," the chief replied, his voice laced with a hint of excitement. "The more they struggle, the more the truth will come to light. And when it does, the residents of Blackwood Hills will rise up and demand justice." Jack couldn't help but feel a surge of adrenaline at the prospect of finally taking down the corrupt HOA that had tormented him and his neighbors for years. But deep down, he knew the battle was far from over. As the press conference was announced and the news spread through the community, the tension in Blackwood Hills reached a fever pitch. Residents whispered in hushed tones, their eyes darting nervously as they wondered what secrets the HOA had been hiding. The day of the press conference dawned, the air heavy with anticipation. Jack and Chief Donovan stood side by side, facing a sea of reporters and cameras, their expressions resolute. "Thank you all for being here today," Donovan began, his voice commanding attention. "We have uncovered evidence of widespread corruption and abuse of power within the Blackwood Hills Homeowners Association." He gestured to the large screen behind him, where the damning photographs were displayed for all to see. These images show the HOA president, Miss Blackwood, and several other board members meeting with a local developer known for his shady business practices. They've been colluding to line their own pockets, using the HOA's resources to intimidate and exploit the residents of Blackwood Hills. The crowd erupted in outraged murmurs, and Jack felt a surge of vindication. Finally, the truth was being exposed. But just as Donovan was about to continue, the doors of the conference room burst open, and a group of armed security guards stormed in. "This press conference is over," a booming voice thundered. "Everyone, clear the room immediately." Jack and Donovan exchanged a knowing glance. The Blackwood Hills HOA was fighting back, and they were playing for keeps. As the room descended into chaos, Jack couldn't help but feel a sense of foreboding. The battle lines had been drawn, and the war for the future of Blackwood Hills was just beginning. The aftermath of the aborted press conference was a whirlwind of activity. The media outlets that had gathered were outraged, their reporters demanding answers and calling for an investigation into the Blackwood Hills HOA's blatant attempt to silence the truth. Jack and Chief Donovan huddled in the chief's office, their brows furrowed as they pored over the evidence they had meticulously gathered. "They're not going to go down without a fight," Donovan growled, his fingers drumming against the tabletop. "That stunt they pulled at the press conference is just the beginning." Jack nodded, his mind racing. We need to be prepared for anything. They'll throw everything they've got at us to keep us from exposing their corruption. The chief leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. I've been in touch with some of my contacts at the state level. They're willing to lend their support, but we need to move quickly before the HOA can cover their tracks. Then let's not waste any time, Jack said, his voice laced with determination. What's the plan? Donovan's lips curled into a grim smile. We're going to take this to the courts. File a massive lawsuit against the Blackwood Hills HOA, alleging abuse of power, fraud, and misappropriation of funds. And we're going to do it in a way that will make it impossible for them to sweep this under the rug. Jack felt a surge of adrenaline coursing through him. I'm ready. Let's do this. Over the next few days, the legal battle against the Blackwood Hills HOA intensified. Jack and Donovan worked tirelessly, gathering more evidence and coordinating with their legal team to build an ironclad case. But the HOA was no slouch either. They deployed their own army of lawyers, using every trick in the book to delay and obfuscate the proceedings. Jack could feel the walls closing in, and he knew that they were in for a long and grueling fight. One evening, as Jack was reviewing the latest legal filings, a knock on his door startled him. Cautiously, he peered through the peephole, his heart racing. To his surprise, it was his neighbor, Mrs. Perkins, a kind-faced woman who had always been wary of the HOA's heavy-handed tactics. Swinging the door open, Jack greeted her with a wary expression. Mrs. Perkins, what are you doing here? The elderly woman's eyes were filled with a mixture of fear and determination. Mr. Ryder, I couldn't stay silent any longer. The things the HOA has been doing, it's just not right. Jack ushered her inside, gesturing for her to take a seat. What do you mean? What have you seen? Mrs. Perkins wrung her hands, her voice trembling. They've been using hidden cameras and surveillance equipment to monitor the residents, tracking our every move, our every activity. Jack felt a chill run down his spine. Hidden cameras? Are you sure? She nodded emphatically. I saw them, Mr. Ryder. In the common areas, in the parks, even on our own properties. They're watching us all the time. The implications of her revelation hit Jack like a ton of bricks. The Blackwood Hills HOA wasn't just corrupt. They were actively spying on the residents, violating their privacy, and using the information to maintain their stranglehold on the community. We have to do something, Mrs. Perkins pleaded, her eyes filled with desperation. This has to stop, for all of us. Jack took a deep breath, his mind racing with possibilities. Don't worry, Mrs. Perkins. We're going to make them pay for what they've done. I promise. As the elderly woman left, Jack knew that the stakes had just been raised. The Blackwood Hills HOA was a formidable opponent, but with the support of the community, he was more determined than ever to take them down. The final battle was about to begin. The courtroom was a cauldron of tension as the legal battle between Jack, Chief Donovan, and the Blackwood Hills HOA reached its climax. The air was thick with the scent of high-stakes drama, each side determined to emerge victorious. Jack sat at the defense table, his eyes fixed on the judge as the proceedings unfolded. The HOA's team of lawyers had pulled out all the stops, throwing every legal maneuver and argument they could muster in a desperate attempt to discredit the evidence and testimony presented by Jack and Donovan. But Jack knew they were fighting a losing battle. The evidence was simply too overwhelming, the corruption too deep-rooted to be ignored. With each witness that took the stand, the Blackwood Hills HOA's dirty laundry was aired for all to see. As the final closing arguments began, Jack felt a sense of cautious optimism. The judge's expression was unreadable, but Jack could sense the weight of the evidence bearing down on the HOA's case. Your Honor, the lead HOA attorney began, his voice dripping with false indignation. The accusations leveled against the Blackwood Hills Homeowners Association are nothing more than a malicious witch hunt. These are upstanding members of our community, dedicated to maintaining the high standards that have made this neighborhood the envy of the region." Jack gritted his teeth, his hands clenching into fists beneath the table. The sheer audacity of the man to stand there and spew such blatant lies was almost too much to bear. "The evidence presented here today," the attorney continued, "is nothing but a carefully orchestrated conspiracy, fueled by the personal grudges of a few disgruntled residents. There is no proof of any wrongdoing, no real substance to these outrageous claims." Jack could feel the eyes of the courtroom upon him, and he knew that this was his moment to strike. Rising from his seat, he stepped forward, his voice clear and unwavering. "Your Honor, the evidence speaks for itself. The Blackwood Hills HOA has engaged in a systematic campaign of abuse, intimidation, and corruption, all in the name of maintaining their stranglehold on this community." He gestured to the stack of documents and photographs on the table. "The trail of financial mismanagement, rigged elections, and illegal surveillance is undeniable." Jack's gaze swept the room, locking eyes with the stunned HOA board members. "These are not the actions of an organization dedicated to community service and upholding high standards. These are the actions of a cabal of power-hungry individuals who have betrayed the trust of the very people they were sworn to serve." The judge's expression remained impassive, but Jack could sense the weight of his words taking hold. "Your Honor," Jack continued, his voice rising with conviction, "the residents of Blackwood Hills deserve better. They deserve a community that is governed by transparency, accountability, and respect for the rights of the individual. And it is our duty to ensure that they get it." As Jack returned to his seat, the courtroom erupted in a murmur of hushed conversations. The HOA's attorneys were visibly shaken, their confident facade crumbling under the onslaught of Jack's passionate and unyielding defense. The judge raised a hand, silencing the room. "I will take the arguments presented here today under advisement. A ruling will be handed down within the next 48 hours." As the gavel fell, Jack felt a surge of adrenaline coursing through him. The battle was not over, but he knew that they were one step closer to victory. The Blackwood Hills HOA had met its match, and this war would not be easily won. The next 48 hours would be the longest of his life, but Jack was determined to see this through to the end. The future of Blackwood Hills hung in the balance, and he was not about to let the corrupt forces that had ruled it for so long emerge unscathed. The tension in the courtroom was palpable as the judge took the stand, his expression grave. Jack felt his heart pounding in his chest, the weight of the decision he was about to hand down bearing down on him like a physical force. After careful consideration of the evidence presented, the judge began, his voice commanding the attention of the entire room. "I have reached a verdict." Jack held his breath, his eyes fixed on the judge's face, searching for any hint of the decision to come. "The Blackwood Hills Homeowners Association is hereby found guilty of abuse of power, financial mismanagement, and illegal surveillance of its residents." The judge's words were met with a stunned silence, broken only by the muffled gasps from the HOA board members. Furthermore, the judge continued, his gaze sweeping the room, "the HOA's leadership, including Ms. Blackwood and the entire board of directors, are to be immediately removed from their positions. Their assets will be seized, and a new transparent governing body will be put in place to oversee the restoration of Blackwood Hills to its former glory." Cheers erupted from the gallery, and Jack felt a surge of triumph coursing through him. The Blackwood Hills HOA, the tyrannical regime that had terrorized the community for years, had finally been brought to its knees. As the judge's gavel fell, signaling the end of the proceedings, Jack turned to Chief Donovan, his eyes shining with a mixture of relief and exhilaration. "We did it," he whispered, his voice trembling with emotion. "We actually did it." Donovan clasped his shoulder, a proud grin spreading across his face. "I never doubted you, Ryder. You're one hell of a fighter." The two men made their way out of the courthouse, greeted by a crowd of jubilant residents, their faces alight with a newfound sense of hope. Jack couldn't help but feel a swell of pride, knowing that their hard-fought battle had paid off. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the streets of Blackwood Hills, Jack found himself in the familiar setting of his neighborhood. But this time, the air felt different. The oppressive silence had been replaced by the laughter of children playing in the park and the friendly chatter of neighbors reconnecting. He made his way to his front door, pausing to take in the sight of the once imposing HOA office, now shuttered and abandoned. A sense of relief and closure washed over him, knowing that the dark chapter of his life had finally come to an end. As he stepped inside, he found a letter lying on his doormat, the familiar handwriting instantly recognizable. It was from Mrs. Perkins, the elderly neighbor who had so bravely come forward with information about the HOA's illegal surveillance tactics. "Dear Mr. Ryder," the letter began, "I wanted to thank you, from the bottom of my heart, for your unwavering determination in the fight against the Blackwood Hills HOA. Thanks to your efforts and the courage of those who stood with you, our community has been liberated from the grip of tyranny." Jack felt a lump in his throat as he read the letter, his eyes brimming with tears of joy. "I can't wait to see what the future holds for Blackwood Hills," the letter continued. "With the corrupt regime finally toppled, I believe we can build a true sense of community, one that values the rights and well-being of all its residents." As Jack folded the letter and tucked it into his pocket, he couldn't help but smile. The battle may have been won, but the real work was just beginning. Blackwood Hills was his home, and he was determined to ensure that it would never again fall under the control of power-hungry tyrants. The storm clouds had parted, and a brighter future lay ahead.